Okay.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Okay.
Well, thanks everybody for showing up live, showing up on the stream for this Authors at Google Talk, and I could not be more excited to be introducing our guests today. So I'll read a little bit to make sure I don't miss the good stuff, although there's so much we could spend the whole hour on this.
We don't need to do that.
Just a little. Some people may not have heard of you two.
Okay.
So just in case. We're thrilled to host Jack and Suzy Welch today. Jack was chairman and CEO of General Electric during a revolutionary time in its history, a time when it went from a great company to the greatest company. And the management practices that Jack instilled and the team he built have been lauded ever since. And it's sort of a once-in-a-generation kind of company and institution that he built and created. Suzy, an author and journalist, former editor-in-chief of the Harvard Business Review, a keen judge of people and talent, and a fantastic writer. And they've been partners and collaborators for over a decade. They're both involved in the Jack Welch Management Institute, which is a leadership development program and an online MBA program as well. And they're here to speak to us today about their book, The Real Life MBA, Your No BS Guide to Winning the Game, Building a Team, and Growing Your Career. And everything that you talk about in here resonates incredibly deeply. It's a personal thrill, actually, to be here because of my own history, my few minutes I spent at GE, unfortunately after your tenure. And it's a delight to meet you in person as well, Suzy. So as you can see, I had a lot of kind of comments and questions. So what we do is I'd kind of kick things off, and then we'll open it up to questions. We also have an online page where people online are submitting questions, and somebody will come up and kind of tee those up.
Great.
And I have the advantage in that I've read this cover to cover. I don't know if everybody in the room has yet had a chance to. But just for a context-setting question, it's been about 20 years since you've been at GE, and you two have been partners in crime for some time. What have you been up to? What have you been doing?
Traveling the world.
Yeah.
Selling a message of business. Business is good. Winning is good. When companies win, good things happen. You got a cheerful crowd like this in the room because Google wins. You wouldn't have that if it was in the tank. So basically, we're out selling how to make it win and why winning is good. And we're also running 24 private equity companies.
Jeez.
And we started a school, which now has 900 MBAs. We've spoken to over 1.25 million people. Excuse my voice, I've been doing this for 3 weeks. And I'm sort of a burned out guy now, but I love doing it. We both love doing it, and we learn every day from different people. We've been in the Midwest, we've been across the East Coast, and then we've been in this beautiful bubble called California.
Yeah.
Now, you were saying when we were talking before that sort of what you see here in Silicon Valley, and you've been to some other companies, you've talked to folks, you're both telling me it's a little different from, once you get 50 miles from here, once you get in the Midwest, once you get to the South. What are you seeing everywhere?
Well, it's a tougher grind. It's a tougher grind. Since the 2008 recession, things have gotten a lot tougher. And people out there aren't back to employment levels they were at before. They're not sure that the company that they signed up for is still the same company. They've lost some benefits. Some other things have gone away. Companies have shrunk down. The word across most of the country is do more with less. That's the slogan. No matter where you go, do more with less. It's not the slogan here.
This morning when we were getting ready to come here, we've been here for a few days, and obviously we, in our lives, have dealings with Silicon Valley companies, and I just sort of was ruminating, and I said to Jack, it is really like a different planet here. I mean, we've just been through the Midwest, Kansas City, Minneapolis, and the questions are different, and the expressions are different, and it's like this very, and I'm saying this in the most positive way because it's a beautiful thing, but it's a very shiny, happy place compared to many other pockets in the United States, and where the sense of possibility here is amazing. And then, but we've been in rooms filled with people who have a very different sense of what the world feels like right now, and wouldn't it be an amazing, marvelous thing if the whole country was experiencing what you're experiencing?
The best way to think about this is Google runs a survey every quarter.
Not Google.
I'm not Google. I mean, Gallup runs I'm in Google, so I got Google on the brain.
We do surveys every quarter, too.
Gallup does a survey every quarter on employee engagement in America. And In the recession, it got down to the point where 70% in 2008 of employees didn't like going to work, were not engaged in their job, didn't like what's going on. Today, 6 years later, 7 years later, it's 65% in the last quarter are disengaged with their work. They don't like work. Work isn't part of their life. They don't see it as part of their life. It's a way to get a check. And that's a terrible thing. And so we're out trying to change that. We're out trying to get people to have this feeling of excitement about growth. Growth is an elixir, what you can do to grow, how you can grow, how you get aligned, all these things. We think, and we've seen it in private equity. I've been involved with 74 companies over the last 15 years, 24 active now. And we've changed lives of these companies because these companies were orphans in big companies. They were broken companies. You don't buy a private equity company because it's healthy. You buy a sick company and try and fix it. And you spend several years fixing it and then giving it freedom. But that life is not going on in many companies.
But you started out by saying you're about sort of, preaching winning. And you famously are known for, at GE you said you have to be number one or number two in an industry or get out of it. You talk about the importance of growth, of winning. What you write about here, and what you're hinting at now is, people just not enjoying their work, about there not being meaning. And in the book, you talk about the importance of having a mission. Is a mission the same as winning? Like, is winning sufficient, or is there something bigger, better?
Winning is the product of a good mission and a good set of behaviors and the consequences that come from it. So winning is the result. It's not a starting point. The starting point, like, for example, we say the chief characteristic of a leader is to be a chief meaning officer. Give the work purpose. People come to work because they want a purpose. They want to have a reason for being. They want to be part of it. And your job as a leader is to let people know why they're there, where they're going, why they're going there. And then when everybody leaves out, in most places, what's in it for them to go there? And what are the consequences, pro and con, of doing it right?
But how do you find that meaning in the kind of places you've been to over the last
I'm just thinking about this
week?
two anecdotes that, I hear your question, and this is a little bit of a roundabout way of saying this. For many years after Jack retired, we ran a seminar called 2 Days with Jack Welch, where 100 CEOs would come in from around the world, and they would work with Jack for 2 days. And when we first did the planning for this, Jack said, I'm just going to spend the first hour on just talking about mission, because all these CEOs surely know what the mission is of their company, and then we'll move right on to X, Y, and Z. So the first day starts out, and Jack says, looks at this crowd, 100 CEOs who had self-selected to come to a group to work on management. So you'd think they'd be very self-actualized and enlightened. And I was sitting sort of at one table with a bunch of CEOs so I could hear what they were saying. And Jack said, okay, so just jot down your mission. And there was like this weird, uncomfortable silence. And I was actually sitting at a table with two brothers who were co-CEOs of a family company. And one brother said to the other, what's our mission? And you're here. We've been here. We've been at Google an hour and a half or something. I've heard the mission mentioned repeatedly. We got a demo. We met people in the hallway, and the mission is just flowing all out of you. And I actually think
Are you getting kind of sick of it by now?
No, I actually dig it a lot. I was saying to Jack, too bad none of our kids are engineers. I mean, they have poetry and whatever. Because this is the kind of place a mother would want her kid to work. And so because of that mission and that sense of incredible, I think you all know what you're doing here and how your work is connected to the mission. And secondly, in our 10, 12 years traveling around the world, we've made the point over and over again that it's imperative for leaders, no matter if you're a leader of 300 people or of 3 people, to make sure that your people know where they stand, how they're doing, what they're doing well, what they could be doing better, what the trajectory of their career looks like. And when we travel around, we say to crowds, how many of you know where you stand? And it is a very, very good day when 15% of the crowd raises their hands. We were in Chicago the other day, 600 people. We asked this question, 4 people raised their hands, knew where they stood, big business group. And so they didn't know the meaning of their work. I mean, clearly, if you're not having a conversation about where you stand and what you could be doing better, you don't even know what the meaning of your work is. This is why that number is 65% of people disengaged. So you should all pinch yourselves, because I bet you know where you stand. I mean, we did this yesterday at a Silicon Valley company, and 85% of the hands went up.
It's about 60%.
Yeah, but it was still better than any place
Any
we've
place
seen.
we've been.
Yeah.
You want to try it here?
Oh, no. I'm terrified. Do not. So we can try it.
Let's try it.
Let's do it.
How many people here know what their boss thinks of them? They know exactly where they stand and what their career trajectory is.
Come on. Thank God.
You win.
Thank God.
Well, I'd say 60%.
No, I think a little bit higher, Jay. Let's do it again. Let's do it
Looked
again.
like 110%
Sorry,
to me, but it was not 100%. There's like 4 people in there, Kevin.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you.
They taking names.
No, but it's something we're not always great at, because we focus on hiring great people, and then we try to give them a lot of freedom, and we try to get managers great. But it's a hard thing even for us to get managers to have those tough messages. And you actually, later in the book, you talk about this. You have a section, I'm going to skip ahead, where you talk about a woman named Lauren. Lauren is a financial analyst. She's 34. She'd heard whispers that she might be made a partner as part of a management transition. And you go on, but suddenly the whispers stopped. And Lauren was informed by a colleague that her boss was the reason. And you continue on. And eventually we asked Lauren, you two asked Lauren, if her boss felt the same way about her value to the firm as she felt about her value to the firm. And she said, he just doesn't want me to be a partner because I'm a woman. He got pissed off when I went to part-time after my baby. And you write, was that the case? It's possible. But here's the story. Lauren was guessing. When we pressed her, she admitted she had no clue how her boss really felt about her performance, long before her baby or after, because he'd never told her. And so what that makes me wonder, and it's great that we actually weren't quite at 100%, whose job is it to make sure the employee knows where they stand? Is it the boss's job? Is it the employee's job? Is it shared 50-50?
No, I think it's without question the boss's job. But the employee has a responsibility, if they've got a bad boss, to press on about it. And we talk about career purgatories, about working for a boss that doesn't have your interest at heart. I mean, that happens in every good company. It'll happen. You'll get a bad boss. We talk about bosses that don't have the generosity gene, that aren't generous about their praise, generous about their rewards, steal ideas and take them up as their own, all those things. So you've got to put timetables on those situations. But it really is the boss's job. We have a daughter. You might tell the story of this one story.
Yeah. So we have one of our daughters works in LA, and she's in the entertainment business, where she was very happy to get a job. So she's working away, and you can imagine having your career managed from afar by us, all right? So here she is working in LA, and she doesn't know how she's doing. She's working very, very hard, but her sense of her performance rises and falls on her boss's mood. Okay, so he's in a good mood. She's doing great.
We get a phone call.
Yeah, so
if the boss grunts, we get a phone call.
I know the phone calls and the texts are related to his mood. So then one day, she gets a raise in the mail, in her paycheck, and she calls us, and she's ecstatic, second only to us being ecstatic that she got a raise. And she said, I got a raise, and we said, well, why'd you get the raise? And she doesn't have any idea why. So because she's related to us, we said to her, you have to go in and find out why you got this raise. No, I don't want to piss him off. We said, no, you've got to find out why you got the raise. So finally, under extreme pressure, she went into his office. We can only imagine it was sort of like, hi, sorry to bother you. And so she said, I got a raise. I'm really happy. Can you tell me why? And he looked at her and said to her, merit. Period. That's it.
And what do you do with that?
She ran out the door. She was so happy to get an answer and call us and say, guess what? I got a raise, merit. And she still doesn't know what it was. Now, since then, she's been promoted. So clearly, they're happy with her performance. But right now, all she knows about what she does well is merit.
But so what's your advice then to somebody where you've got a bad boss, who's not telling you where you stand? Just that you're fine. Your bonus is kind of okay. It's great. Right. It's maybe goes up a little each year, whatever. Do you just say, do you confront the boss? Do you push for an answer?
No,
What's your
I think
advice?
the way you go, I'd like to talk to you about how you feel about my work. Yeah. I'd like, how do you feel? What do you think I'm doing well? And how do you think I can improve? How can I really improve? Because I want to do a better job here. And you don't ever confront them head on. Yeah. You go at, what can I do better?
Why don't you confront them head on? Why don't you just say, what's going on with me?
Well, you can say what's going on, but you got to ask them, what can I do better? Don't go in and start challenging them. It doesn't make sense. It's suicide.
Yeah.
But come at it the other way.
Yeah.
How can I do better? And what do you think I have to do to move on?
Yeah.
What do you think would be the criteria that would get me the next level?
Yeah. Well, the two of you talk about later in the book, when you're into the personal advice, you have a section called Why Careers Stall, which is related to this, because often your career stalls, probably you also often aren't getting feedback and you're trying to figure it out. And you talk about career stalling for a few reasons. You've got a blocker above you can't grow. You talk about, and you talk about how to resolve that. You talk about wrong-headed notions about the importance of multifunctional expertise. You talk about boss haters, and you talk about purgatory. It's like Dante's Inferno of career management here. It's awful. So can you talk a little bit about like if you feel stuck, what is a blocker? What does that look like ahead of you, above you, around you? And then maybe we can step through each of these.
A blocker is somebody who's enjoying your great work and is very happy to keep you in the draw, to keep getting all that good work so that they look very good. That could be one case of a blocker. Another case of a blocker is, and these Midwestern companies we were talking about, is there's no growth. The boss is going nowhere. That doesn't happen here. There's plenty of growth, creating opportunities all the time. But in many companies, most of the world right now, with a GDP of 0.8% growth, doesn't have all these jobs opening up. So you're stuck there in a no-growth situation with a good boss, maybe.
Yeah.
But what you have to do in all these situations is control your own destiny. You got to put a time frame on it. I'll stick it out here for 2 years or 1 year, whatever you decide. Pick a time frame, and I'll over-deliver. I'll give them more than they've ever seen before. And if nothing happens, I've got to take my wares and move on.
Why do you think when you say it, that seems like, I mean, that's fantastic advice. Most people don't do that. Why not?
Insecurity, lack of self-confidence, comfortable where they are, or maybe family situations, kids can't move.
Right.
They're in high school, college, whatever.
Momentum, just
Momentum
inertia. I mean, just humanity. I mean, and the fear of the unknown. And I think also sometimes people don't do anything because they have this little nagging voice inside saying maybe the problem is me. And it's just much easier not to look at that piece of it. And so they rather just bump along.
But I used to go to Crotonville, which is our education place, and I would teach every class. And I would spend 3 hours in the class, Q&A, and then I'd spend 3 hours at the bar, and I'd learn more at the bar than I did in the teaching program. But basically what I would always leave them with, always, love being here, love being a G, but be ready to leave. We want you to, so that put the pressure on the leadership. If the leadership wasn't taking care of you, and we started seeing good people leaving in a certain area, and it didn't happen very often, I'll tell you, in those days. Yeah. It didn't happen very often, but if it did, we knew we had a bad boss. Just like if you have a plant, a factory, we had a lot of factories, and when a union showed up, and the union took a vote, and they got a positive vote. Now, we never formed a union in the 21 years I was there, but whenever it came up for a vote, we knew we had a jackass plant manager, because otherwise it wouldn't get there. Yeah. If you had the right atmosphere, the right feelings in the place, a transparent. We want transparency. Transparency is the biggest virtue you can have in a company. And if you have a transparent spot, you won't have unions forming. People will think they have voice anyway. They will have voice. They only form a union to get voice, because nobody's listening otherwise.
So when you have these situations, and I want to circle back to the career side, but you've both seen a ton of companies. And every time in the book you talk about a leadership transition, you talk about firing people. And this isn't the stack rank 70, 20, 10 stuff. This is, you talk about Eric Firewald at Nalco. And he goes in, and he moved on. You say many top leaders had to be asked to move on. More than half of the top 100. So new CEO, 50% or more of people gone. And then you say a personnel move speaks louder than 100 speeches. And there's a few other parts of the book where you talk about the importance of, when you come in as a leader, firing some of the people under you. Is that just good hygiene?
We're talking there about private equity.
Okay.
So in private equity, the reason why you buy a company is it's an orphan usually in a company. It's a division that isn't like that. I'm not sure in Google there are some, but I bet there are. A division that's sort of the turkey over here. It gets less attention from the top people. It doesn't get loved, doesn't get enough resources compared to others. There are those in most companies. So you buy these companies because the company wants to trim down, particularly with activists out there now. Companies are selling off divisions. And you grab a division. Well, those people haven't been looked at for 10 years. They've been sitting over there, not growing, not performing, but not being told anything. Yeah. So you bring them in, and you've got to get a fresh eye, look at the situation. So we're talking mainly about companies you're acquiring that have been dead on their feet for years.
And I think a lot of times, especially in those stories, is that, look, when you want your company to be productive and fast and creative and innovative and all those things you want, people pretty much need to share the values. And the values have to be things like teamwork and like maybe you have here fast failure. I mean, you have values that you want people to demonstrate. And so when there are these leadership transitions, if a leader comes in and says, you know what, I am installing these values, the values of urgency and speed and boundarylessness, and you have people who, there's a great story in the book, I think, by when Dave Calhoun came into Nielsen, and he knew that this was a silo company where nobody spoke to each other, and he knew that if it was going to survive and be the company he wanted it to be, he needed people who wanted to share ideas, and he tried to get that value across. But when he found managers that just would not share ideas, he had to ask them to move on. So it's a lot about values, which you guys talk about values a lot, so this should sound pretty familiar, right?
But could you imagine imagine a company that's going great and you have a leadership change at whatever level, right? It doesn't have to be CEO, could be a division, what have you. What are the odds that they're not going to have to fire anybody from the direct reports?
We've had, we bought 2 medical companies in high growth industries that were underfunded. Yeah. And we didn't touch a person. Yeah. And we've had 6x returns with just pouring money at them, giving them the resources to grow. They were flourishing. Now, you rarely find those birds, okay? Yeah. Whenever you find a bluebird like that, you go home and rub your hands. Life is easy. It's all good. And you take it public in 2 years and make 6x.
And you look like a genius.
Absolute genius. All you did was give good people money.
Yeah. That's a good strategy.
Yeah.
You know, the thing you have in your book, which I like so much, and I've never seen it written. I write it all the time, but I've never seen other than you and I, this idea of paying great people lots. Yeah. Yeah. Paying great people. It is that we have a story in here of getting whacked and recovering from a whack. And what we talk about there is the 2008 recession in a company. We were so brilliant, we bought this company called Home Depot Supply. And Home Depot Supply sold lots of goods to the construction industry. In 2007, it was booming. Housing booming, everything booming. And it was doing $12 billion in revenues. In 2008, 4 quarters later, it was doing $7 billion. Wow. It collapsed on itself. And so all our smart decision to buy it couldn't have been worse timing. Could not have been worse timing. We get it, and this guy, Joe D'Angelo, brings in he's got his team. He had been hiring him for some time, a bunch of people he worked with before. His first act was not, let's cut 10% across the board. We got to save money. No, his first thing was pay the aces tons of equity. Tons of equity. So I got to keep the stars. If I'm going to get out of this whack where he's practically going bankrupt, the first thing I got to do is make the stars know we're all swimming in the same tank together, and I'm giving you lots of money. Well, to make a long story short, he did lots of other things to get out of that whack. And we talk about getting out of a whack. We'll all have whacks, business-wise, personal, you'll get hit, and how you get out of it. Well, this is a story of this guy taking the absolute non-traditional way of doing it. He went at, give me the aces in the game, and I'll give them all the money. Well, they just went public about 6 months ago. The top team, now this isn't big money by Silicon Valley standards, but the top guys got over $100 million. The other,
That's big money.
even here,
Let me correct you. Yeah, that counts.
no, and the mid-level guys all got $20 to $40 million.
That's also big money.
But it was fabulous. But they hung in there through 6 years of fighting that mess. But he did the opposite of what you traditionally see. Nothing's worse than anything across the board. Across the board raises, across the board cuts. They're all sinful things to do in business. They're just cowards.
Well, we were talking about this a little beforehand. So you find your aces, you give them the big equity. What do you tell, and the middle people they kind of get it, they're worker bees. The people at the
But they
bottom.
give some equity.
Okay, they get equity too. What do you do about the layer just below the ones who get the giant awards?
That's the toughest layer to manage.
Yeah.
I mean, we started out with a system, Bill Connolly and I,
Yeah.
of going 10, 15, 50, 15, 10.
And Bill Conley was your head of
Head of
HR.
HR. And we were partners in this.
Yeah.
We lived people the whole time. That was our whole job in G. We didn't spend a lot of time on other stuff. And the trouble always came in trying to make these careful slices of 10 between the top 10 and the next 15. You know, we're all humans. We're making these cuts, and we're not really that good at making. And so we'd piss off the next group. So we cut that down to top 20, middle 70, bottom 10, to try and get a distribution that looked like this. And the biggest problem you have is taking good people in the middle and telling them they're in the middle.
Yeah.
That by far is the hardest job. And so I always erred on pushing them to the top of the middle and giving them as close as you could to the top.
And they're happy with that? They live happily ever after, or they're just slightly less unhappy?
You got to understand that these ratings
Yeah,
are a period in time. They're not a lifetime sentence.
yeah,
You don't
6
get,
months.
I'm in the top 5%.
yeah.
I mean, am I there forever? No. If you stink, you get out of there. And if you're in the next group, you guys have 5, 20, or whatever you got, that 5-tier thing. And people that can move by performance.
Yeah.
And the thing we got to get clear though on performance, because even you had, in your letter had a little misunderstanding of what our thing was.
Yep.
When you're looking at valuing where people are, there are 2 axes. On one axis is behaviors, the values of the company, speed, boundaryless behavior, etc. Now you do that, a separate evaluation of these things, and you put a half circle or a full circle, because you can't put a numerical number to those. You fill in a circle. If they're fully qualified in that area, they get a full circle, half circle, quarter circle, whatever. And then you come up with a judgment. This is how the company is this is how this employee adheres to the behaviors we need to win. Because it's where we're going. That's the mission. How we're going to get there are the behaviors.
Yep.
And then the consequences.
Yep.
And then you got, on the bottom axis, you got numerical performance. Whether it's sales quotas, R&D, new products, whatever you pick as the financial measurements. Okay, then you draw 4 quadrants on people. And in the top, and it's low to high on each axis, okay? Low to high, I wish we had a little whiteboard here, but low to high. In the top right, you got high values, high behaviors, and high performance. That's easy, onward and upward. On the bottom, you got on the bottom left quadrant, you've got low behaviors and low numbers. That's easy too. Give them some time to either fix it or they move on. Then the third type over here on the upper left, you got low performance but high behaviors. Very good. They're on your team. They believe in everything you believe in. You give them a second, third, fourth chance. Because when you get somebody who buys into the whole system, the mission, if you will, the mission of Google, the mission of company X, Y, or Z, you want that person But it's the fourth quadrant out to the right that kills companies. And I'm sure that you've seen them here, and you've seen them everywhere. The high performer who's a horse's ass. And every time you tolerate that person, and you talk about your values and your behaviors, and you've got some jerk who's kissing up and kicking down while getting good numbers, you keep tolerating them, and you give speeches on values and mission and beauty and peace and everything else. But you've got this person. Every promotion of that person, every time that person gets promoted, you ruin 50 speeches, 500 speeches. Stop flapping your lips. Don't talk about it. So that person with high-performing numbers and lousy values is a killer of culture. It's a killer of culture.
You talk about, I think this is a category of that, you talk about boss haters. Like when you talk about why careers get stalled, to come back to that, some of it is you've got a blocker. The other category was this, you spread too wide, which if we have time we'll come back to. But talking about low values, you talk about boss haters and how they don't know they're boss haters or they don't admit it, but they're toxic, they're poisonous.
I'm going to come back to that because I want to stay on this other thing a minute more.
Please.
Because you talked about in your book Microsoft, and you talked about Yahoo, and you talk about that rank and yank, that terrible word, was destroying those companies. You interviewed people, et cetera. The facts are you couldn't be in the top performing group if you didn't have teamwork. Because you're in the wrong place. They're looking at numbers. They're not looking. Enron was all numbers. Okay? That's a misapplication of a theory of the case. Because you're an important guy to carry this message long term. That's why I'm pitching you. No, it's very real. You can't be a bad team player or a bad behaving person and be in the top 10.
So let's dig into that. So I agree, but let's explore for the folks who are watching and listening. So somebody who has great numbers, great salespeople, brilliant engineer, total jerk, horse's ass.
Right.
You can see that. What about the people where they're not at both extremes? The great numbers, but they're a jerk sometimes. They kick down sometimes. They're kind of political. Where do you draw the line? Where do you call? How much of that kind of behavior is acceptable? Is any of it, or is none of it?
You can tell. Do people want to hang out with them? Do they have a place where people want to work? Are they attracting people, or are people dodging them?
Well, but so one thing we've seen here, because we do surveys, we love our data. We do surveys about how, what do you think of your manager every 6 months? And one of the things that happens is we see people who are kind of brutal, really rough, tough managers. And what ends up happening is the teams end up giving them positive scores because they say, well, you know what? I don't like working for this person, but I know where I stand. Or, you know what, I've learned more than I've ever learned. Yeah, I get beat up once in a while, but I'm learning so much because this person's direct and in my face. And what's interesting is when those people move jobs, the leaders move jobs, no one follows them. And the team kind of goes, But every measurement we have along the way, you look at it objectively and people go like, oh yeah, it's fine, I can deal with it. It's within, is this like having a bad boyfriend or girlfriend, you just can't break up? Is it like, what's the secret?
No, you're going to have some.
And how do you find those people?
You're not going to you're going to look to the last day you breathe, and you're not going to get them all. I mean, you can get faked out on this all the time. Nobody has a perfect system. The question is, what's a better system? It's always got to be that, because you can always argue against the perfect, but no system is perfect. But you've got to be able to evaluate people on two axes, not one. And now you may not get it right, you may not be perfect, but you'll be better than any other system out there.
I think you're right about the second axis. I think we need that. We absolutely do. I have one question I want to save for the end, but I want to open it up for questions, either that are submitted online or if anyone in the room has questions. Actually, I have a whole bunch of questions, but if anyone wants to start migrating. Do you want to just run to the mic so we can get a recording of that?
Hi, thanks again for coming to Google. One of the challenges that any large company has is remote office workers in developing their talent. What are some of the best strategies you've seen? I know you developed talent in your remote offices when you were at GE. What are some of the best strategies you've seen for owning your own career as a remote office worker?
Well, I'll try a couple and you try them. We have an online school. all remote. And the biggest challenge is, how do you socialize that office to believe they belong to the mothership? It's a huge deal. You've got to make all kinds of efforts. What we do is we have pivot points on the computer screen. We know how many contacts the dean has with every faculty member per week. We know how many contacts every dean has, every faculty member has with every student. An online school is the toughest thing in the world. People are working all day, go home and do the work at night. They got a sick kid. The worst thing can happen to them is stay up all night and do a paper, turn it in, get back. Nice job. Killer. So you got to have that exchange. So we monitor totally the socialization aspects of the faculty with the student, the dean with the faculty. We got to bring them in. We talk about subcontractors. Same thing. Subcontractor has 7 clients. How do I make the subcontractor like me more so I get his heart and soul? Well, here you feed him. You do all kinds of things. But you want to get that subcontractor with more allegiance to you than to the other 6 clients he has. So you're always working on socialization. You're always bringing them into the core as much as you can. You're measuring how many contacts you have. You're doing all these things to be sure that nobody feels they're out on an island.
I think the main thing is that if you don't actively manage people who are working remotely or virtually, if you don't actively manage it and you let it sort of manage itself, it falls apart. And so managers often can feel, I mean, I felt that way myself when I was the editor of a magazine. I had a lot of people not working in the office because editing can be done anywhere. And so a lot of people were in life stages where they wanted and needed to work at home, right, with a lot of moms. And you want to accommodate them because they were so talented. And you're so busy with what you're doing day to day that you just sort of let it go. And then you realize 6 months have gone by and you haven't seen this person and you haven't really talked to them. And every interaction you've had with them has been electronic. It was easy and it was working pretty well. And then you get that person in and you have a conversation and you think how much better it could have been. And so I think you just have to have it on your to-do list to actively manage remote relationships. And if you just let them go, which is the natural human thing to do, you just are not getting everything you can out of it, and teamwork suffers.
The one thing that Google could bring to the world, if you will, is the ability to socialize online education. No matter how hard we try, whether it be Blackboard, whether it be this system or the other system, we still are missing the socialization link in our MBA program. That's the weak link in the system. How do we get our students more engaged in our game?
And new technology comes out all the time. Believe me, we see it.
It's not enough.
There's nothing there
we
yet.
We need breakthroughs.
Please do it. You know.
Please do it.
Well,
and it would apply to these offices.
Are you Google for Education customers? Because we can introduce you to
what you have Noodle and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we've looked at it. It isn't good enough.
Oh.
It isn't. No, it's a nice product, but it isn't good enough.
Next frontier.
Okay. Next question.
Thank you. So I had a question on your career management. So there are 2 approaches, right? One is you stay within a company and you grow, stay 20, 25 years within GE or a company like that. And in the Silicon Valley, it's more like, every few years you sort of get a promotion as in joining another company and move around every few years. So how would you contrast the 2 approaches to managing your career?
I don't think you manage your career. I think you manage your job, and what you do is you over-deliver all the time. So you become a commodity with gold stars everywhere, so everybody wants you. Anybody who's managing their career, picking, I'll go here next, and I'll go here next, and if I get that job, then I'll get that job. Killer perform. Keep your eye on your job. Do better than anybody's ever done in that job. And good things will happen to you, is my view of all those things. Whether you stay in that company or go to another company.
That's actually in your career chapter. That's your first main point. You say, don't deliver, over-deliver.
Yeah.
And again, that's something most people actually, we do our best, but most of us don't think about it as, I'm going to kick butt every single day. I'm going to exceed everyone's expectations.
I think it's hard to talk about that in this room because I'm going to presume that most of you have been over-delivering since you were in kindergarten.
Most of them. Most of them.
Okay, but I mean, over-delivering is an interesting concept. You know, it's that it is, you know, for some people it's very natural, okay? But for others it's not. By over-delivering, it means doing, you know, in school you're taught to deliver. Even when you're at a fine school, okay? You know, you get the assignment, you hand in the assignment, you do the assignment very well, and you're going to get a great grade, okay? When you get into the real world, it's a different thing. It's about making the assignment much bigger. I mean, you're asked to do X, and you actually give serious thought to what would be the bigger question. And so you deliver on X and the bigger question. You know, Jack tells a great story about when he was trying to get out of the pilot early on. He was a chemical engineer, PhD, and his boss asked him to present to his boss about some plastic. And instead, he presented to the boss about the entire picture of the plastics industry in 5 and 10 years, and just sort of did this McKinsey-like presentation on. They couldn't believe that, but that's over-delivering. And so the question is, are you thinking expansively enough about your work? And that is the way to manage your careers. If you are constantly over-delivering, and you've got to have a certain natural love and joy about the work to be doing that, and a certain natural engagement and curiosity about the work to be doing it. I mean, otherwise it's really hard labor.
One thing to think about, and this is a simple little tip, is your boss a lot smarter after the meeting you had with him or her than before the meeting took place? Is your boss going out and can go to a cocktail party and can blow smoke about something you gave him beautiful insights into or gave her insights into, can just end up smarter? Did the boss just sit through a mind-numbing, boring regime of you telling him what you've done and how you do, or have you given him an expansive, broad view of the subject that he asked about or the meeting was supposed to be about? Think about that every time. Never go to a meeting without making the boss you're dealing with smarter for having sat through that meeting with you. Simple tip, but think about it.
Well, but what I love, and then we'll go to the question, is you keep coming back to things that I as an individual control. Right?
Yeah.
I control how much work I'm putting in. I control whether I'm going above and beyond.
Right.
I control what happens in that meeting with the boss. I control, do I ask about, you know, the woman who asked, you know, what's my rating, you know, what's going on. There's a huge focus on that. And that's very different from the typical advice, which is, well, you know, chart your course and check these boxes and get this experience.
I hate it. Why would you? We have an example in the book. Everyone says, oh, get a lot of multifunctional experience. That'll do a lot for you. I always say, don't bring skates to the basketball court. That's for hockey. Don't try skating on the basketball court. Michael Jordan tried playing baseball. He stunk at it. Okay? He went into pro baseball.
Yeah.
And do what you're good at and just excel like hell at it. And the sky's the limit.
That's how a chemist becomes a CEO?
Yeah.
Yeah. How good a chemist were you?
Yeah, right. Good question.
Pretty average bear, chemical engineer.
Yeah.
Pretty average bear.
Really?
But compared to other PhDs, let me tell you the difference. I got a PhD with a Nobel Prize winner.
Uh-huh.
I got out in 3 years. Most of my peers took 7. They were all smarter than I were. But they dawdled. They played in the lab. They liked lab hours. I wanted to get the hell out of there. You know,
You wanted to be with people.
I wanted to be with people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I mean, so I wasn't smarter by any means, not even close. But I was in a hurry.
I think that might have made. I think we could debate the smarter part. I think you probably did all right.
I did all right, but
We'll see. We'll see. I guess in the next few years how things work out.
Yeah.
For Jack Welch. Another question.
Hey, thank you. I was wondering if I could ask a question about smaller companies,
Yes.
because I think we have a lot in common here with small companies. I was just curious if you, having your experience at GE, a big corporation, if there are any, because I think small companies are often proud of the fact that they're small and they don't
Yep.
have much in common with corporations.
Yeah,
What do you think smaller companies could incorporate practices, learnings from a big company that you think they often overlook or avoid intentionally?
Well, I mean, what a company always wants to be. Don't forget that plastic story we started with. I was the first employee, and 18 years later, we were a $16 billion company. We had one technician. I hired the first one, the second one, the third one, Now, we had the luxury of building that $16 billion company in a big corporation that didn't know anything about plastics. So we were shielded, and we had lots of money. We had a bank behind us. So we weren't out starting it up in the ground. But where does a small company never want to be? It never wants to be a bureaucracy. What does a big company want to be? It wants to get rid of layers. It wants to delayer and become a small company. But what does a small company want to be? It wants to have leverage in the marketplace. So it has to have unique products to get leverage in the marketplace. It must be unique. It can't have just coverage. So you want the muscle of a big company and the heart of a small company. And all these things go together. For example, when you talk about business as a sport, the team with the best players wins. That's what happens in sports. The team with the best players playing together wins. That's what happens in business. So it doesn't matter whether you're a small business or a big business, you want the best players. You want to constantly reward the best. You want to do all the same things, but you don't want. I was talking at LinkedIn yesterday and talking here today. You guys are now a bureaucracy. You can have all the food and all the stuff around here, but you're a bureaucracy. Come on. You got guys like him with forms and all that stuff. I mean, it happens.
Yeah.
It happens.
I'm going to survey them about this talk after. Just to, I want the forms.
No, I mean, you
have to fear
You're
and
fighting
loathe.
every day. But you got layers. You're adding layers. You can't have this many people and not have layers. Mm-hmm. But you got to fight. Every layer has to go through the scrutiny of. You got to start from the standpoint of I never want to have a layer. When you're starting a small company, you give them salary. Don't have to give them a title. Give them salary. Give them more span. I had 29 direct reports. Ideally, I should have had 60 probably. Because if you don't have a lot of direct reports, you can't meddle. And if you have good people, you want them to have their own heads. So you got to fight like hell all the time not to layer up a place. Every layer is evil. It spins messages. It delays decision making. It does all these terrible things.
So on this point, one of the things you talk about, one of these...
I probably didn't answer your question, but you understand the theory.
One of the things you talk about in terms of bureaucracy is you touch very briefly on budgets. And you talk about how every company has these budget negotiations internally about how much you're going to spend. And you write, there's this beautiful line about, and somehow you always end up in the middle, right? Because people, sandbag. How do you cut through that? How do you get people to be honest?
Look, the main point in this book is what a leader's job is to create an atmosphere of truth and trust. Where every meeting you'd have a neon light up here. It's only truth being spun here. No spin, no BS. We want the truth only. Because everybody comes in with a pitch and they got their own biases. They're pitching it, spinning it. Let's take the budget review as a perfect example. I'm in the field. I come into headquarters at Google here with my budget. And I'll come in and say the market stinks, the world's coming to an end. The Chinese are killing us. This is happening here. All I can do is 2. And then the bosses here will say, I need 4. And you'll go into a windowless room and sit there and bang heads. There'll be no customers, no analysts, nobody around. And you'll sit there for 7 hours with presentations and slides and all that stuff. And you'll come out with 3. That's the budget for the year. Nothing will have happened. The only measurements that count is how did you do against last year and how did you do against any competitors you measure against. That's all that counts. Measuring against a budget is the dumbest thing that was ever invented in business. The dumbest thing. Because a budget is a negotiation between 2 human beings. It has nothing to do with the world. It's crazy.
Yeah, you talk about looking at variance instead, right?
Yep.
You talk about variance instead, is what you.
Everything's variance.
Yeah.
In my mind, we have a chapter in here. Don't be afraid of finance. If you understand variance analysis, how does the marketing budget compare to last year? And are the sales going up because you doubled the marketing budget, or are they not? Everything against a variance, against last year, against 2 years ago, and you're acquiring a company. Why are you going to spend that much versus what they spent before? Everything's variance. It's arithmetic. It's not DCRRs or DCFs or IRRs and all that crap. You don't need it. You need to understand variance. That's what you need in finance.
Is there, I don't know if Cliff's still here who has the Dory questions, but if there's one, if not, oh, we got them all? Okay. So and if there's any other questions, we've got a few minutes left. Two last things. One actually, what do you do in all your travels? What's the biggest business opportunity out there? What's the biggest, most exciting thing on the horizon? And not at a high level like, online learning or, digital or something like that, but like, if you were starting out, what industry would you go in? What problem would you tackle? What would you do?
Well, I think that's one for you. I can do one thing. I can write. So, for me, it's like, the world doesn't need that many more writers. So,
Well, I think biotech is just the most exciting area in the world right now.
Why is that?
Yeah, because you're dealing with a clear-cut mission. You talk about mission, it's easy.
Yeah.
We have a medical systems business in GE. We buy medical companies. It's not a problem getting the mission understood by everybody. You're changing lives. You're making lives better. You're doing all that. I think, it's a frontier now with enormous upside to explore.
But if people have said this about biotech like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, is it different today? Than
Yeah, it's much harder now. There's much more breakthroughs.
Yeah.
Drugs are coming out much faster through technology.
Yeah. What about, actually, do you want to?
Yeah, sure.
Hi, thanks for coming. I'm in a position where I'm choosing a new team right now. What are some of the things that I should be looking for in my new manager? What should I look for in a boss?
You're choosing to go to what team?
no, you're building a team.
No, I'm moving to a new team.
Oh, okay. So,
Okay.
what are you looking for in your boss?
Go through
Your
it.
generosity team.
Yeah.
All right. So, there's one characteristic that we think separates a good boss from a great boss, and that's this thing that we call the generosity gene. And it's technically not a gene, but it is a. Okay, I have to say that.
Hold your questions on that. It's
okay,
not,
but-
she knows it's not a gene.
But it is. And I only say that because Jack calls it the generosity gene, and I'm always sort of there piping up saying, all right. But, and maybe it is. What do I know? But I think that what it is, okay, and you've seen it, you've all experienced it, it's this preponderant, this desire, this burning desire in an individual to see the people around working for him or her growing. And they get really psyched about giving promotions and raises and seeing people get things right and just getting better. And so if you're looking for, we've all worked for bosses with the generosity gene who have this incredible heart of love, really, for people to grow and to get better and to really want to and really love you as an individual and see you get more money and see you get promoted and see you even leave the team to go on to bigger and better things. And then we've all had the bosses who steal your idea and use it as their own and don't want to and really get stingy around raises and really get stingy about celebrating you. And so if you're looking for what team you're going to go to, you want to work for that because you'll go the extra mile and the team will be that much more energized when the leader has got this generosity gene.
And if you think about it, stay there a minute. If you think about it in this room, all of you, you've worked for both types. You've worked for people with a generous spirit. You worked for people that didn't have it. Where was it more fun? Where was it more enjoyable? Because when I look at the people that have led in our company, in the companies I've worked with, 74 private equity companies in GE, if I look at these guys, the winning people, male or female, they had this experience. They loved to see their people grow. The biggest thrill for me is you can count them, 50, 60, 70 CEOs out there now who work for me. Many of them, you refer to one in your book, Dave Cody. Mm-hmm. We've got, they were all chief executives of GE businesses. That's the biggest turn on in the world, to have the Boeing CEO, the Honeywell CEO, the Home Depot CEO. All these people were my partners. They're my friends. And the nice thing, Google's going to have that. They probably have a lot of it now already, whether it be Marissa Mayer or whoever else is out there. You'll have the same raft because you've got a human resource process that works. And that's one of the great thrills of life, to see these people sprouting up all over the place from Google. And Google will be the GE of the last 20 years ago. Going forward, they'll have tons of CEOs out there running companies, and it'll be the biggest turn on for Google.
It is.
It
It
is.
is. It's amazing to watch, folks. So last question for each of you.
Thanks for that question.
You write in one of the concluding chapters, you say, to quote Mark Twain, the two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you figure out why. I'd love, if you don't mind, for you to share, why were you each born? Why are you here?
You know, it's, well, for me, yeah, I happen to be a devout Christian, so for me, the answer is just going to be, I was born to glorify God. So I think that that's a really personal thing, and probably if there's any other Christians in the room, they would have the same answer. So that would be the answer. Now, how I glorify God is I have a gift, which is writing, and I sort of discovered that I had that gift, like many writers do, when I was really young. Like I started a diary when I was 9 years old, and I wrote in it every single day. And if I didn't write in it, I felt like something was really wrong. So I was really lucky to be able to have that gift. And then I've been unbelievably blessed to find many different ways to use that gift to change people's lives. And in fact, when I was running HBR, when I would try to recruit people, I would say, please come join me, help change the world. And that was, I mean, that was just an incredible, so I was able to use my gift, and all writers use their gifts in different ways, so.
That's amazing. Thank you.
No, I just happen to be lucky enough. Luck plays an enormous part in where you get to in these jobs. So you bust your butt, you do all these things, but I love people. And when I took this job on, from the first plastic, I loved my first employee, to my second employee, to my third employee. I like hanging out, and I like being with people. And contrary to what Laszlo feels, and he's smarter and brighter in some ways.
Going for you.
No, I believe my gut. I'm a gut guy. I'm not an analyst. I have a PhD and all that stuff, but I believe in gut and feel and touch and people. And I'll hire, and I'll make mistakes with my gut many times. But so far, people like me. They work hard for me. We all work as a team. It isn't me, but I always hire people smarter than me in every job I've ever been in, and I like them. I like hanging around with them. I mean, if you like people, this is a fun job. It's a great job, and that's what I like. And so it all worked out. I was captain of sports all through college. I was captain of sports in high school. People tend to let me be captain. So it seemed to be fun. And I've never stopped liking it. That's why we keep doing this. We love these interchanges. We learn everywhere we go. We see these magnificent people doing things. And it's wonderful to be out here where you're seeing all this growth, because growth really is an elixir of life. It truly is. It gives you a whole new jolt. And we're lucky enough and fortunate enough to have people come and listen to us. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And again, so if I could just say two quick things in closing. One is it's not often you have a discussion about a business book that then hinges on talk about God and love and changing the world and transformation. It's an incredible gift to have both of you here and to have you share the wisdom you both accumulated. So thank you on behalf of Google. The other thing is, I know just for this room that you both offered to kind of hang around and say hello to folks. Anybody who wants to come up and chat.
Over there, I guess.
And we have some books up back there that you're free to take. Some others when we run out that you're free to purchase at a discount. I imagine your hands aren't completely sore.
No,
and
we're
broken from-
happy to sign any
You'll
books.
probably get a feet signatures. Okay. But thank you sincerely for sharing your
Thank
message.
you for being here. Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Real pleasure. Thank you.